Okay. Yeah, I am recording. I think you guys can hear me. It's showing my microphone is working, so fingers crossed. Um so obviously I am currently quarantined. Yay. And I have the Rona again. Yay. So I will be back, should be back on Tuesday of next week, I believe. But until then, I did want to give you guys a little bit of information and give you this particular presentation so that you can watch it and have some extra info for your Chapter 6 project, which I'll explain at the end of this video. Also, bear with me because I can't breathe. So, oh, it's rough. All right, so what we're going to talk about for the next couple of weeks is Jefferson's presidency. So I know we kind of skipped really fast through Washington's presidency, which we talked about his farewell address last week. And then we are really going to kind of skip over John Adams' presidency just because not really, there were things that happened, but really, if we want to talk about a change in the landscape of the United States and its political structure, Jefferson is where that happens. So if Washington was this kind of pinnacle of the presidency of the, the culmination of everything that they had fought for during the Revolutionary War, Thomas Jefferson is going to be the the same as that, but for the states as opposed to a federal government. Washington balanced everything out fairly well, I believe. And Adams came in during his presidency, and he was more of a federal government type person. Thomas Jefferson is going to be the first one to really challenge that, and he's going to be the one that gives a lot more power to the states, and he'll be the first one to do that. So we're going to go through these very quickly. Presidential candidates of the election of 1800. You have the Federalists, John Adams. Nope, there we go. There's John Adams. He's running for re-election. And Charles Pinckney. There's him. He looks fabulous as always. That was a joke, by the way. He's a really funny looking dude. Anyway, also this term is they're called the Republicans, and it's going to be what is the precursor to the Republican Party. This is not a true Republican as what we think of today. Um, these are basically just the anti-federalists, and you have Thomas Jefferson and his vice president Aaron Burr. You may know Aaron Burr if you know who Alexander Hamilton is, or if you have watched the play on Disney Plus, which is absolutely fantastic, but has a whole lot of language in it, so, parental supervision and all. But Aaron Burr is the dude who duels and shoots Alexander Hamilton. So anyway, these two are going to run for president against John Adams. Thomas Jefferson is going to be the one to win. Now there are a few different things. Campaigning is different at that time. People during this period thought that direct campaigning is improper. That's a lot of, large words, I guess. But direct campaigning means people who campaigned for themselves, in a sense. People who went out and went door to door and campaigned, um, tried to sell themselves to you. They thought other people should be the ones who push for you to get voted for. Um, Candidates would send letters to leading citizens and newspapers in hopes that those leading citizens would pick them up and would start buying for them and start saying, hey, go vote for this person. Because it's just the kind of sense of it's selfish and all of that to vote for to push yourself, and you always push yourself as kind of a, you're not going to you go into an interview, you're not going to say, hey, please don't hire me. You shouldn't, at least. Um, but you're going to be very biased. So it's that kind of concept behind it. Let's also vote Loki because, TV shows, Marvel TV shows. We'll have to talk about these when I get back. Back to it. All right. What role did the Electoral College play in the election? You guys remember talking about the Electoral College, which you can kind of see back behind here. It would not have, you wouldn't have had all 50 states. It would have been these territories here, and then the original 13. Jefferson and Burr received equal votes in the Electoral College, which means that the House of Representatives had to decide the election. And in that, you voted the presidents. The election system ran a little bit different at this time. You didn't have a president and a vice president who ran together. You had a president. You had two people who ran for president and then people who ran for the vice presidency, and the electoral college would decide both of those. Now, in the case of Jefferson and Burr, when this is going to be the first time we send it to the House of Representatives to decide the election. If you have an election that is overly contested, so you get an even amount in the electoral college, you have different slates of electors sent to the Capitol because there's some kind of disagreement over the votes. There are a few other different situations where that could happen. The electoral vote goes to the House of Representatives, and then the House of Representatives gets to decide who the president is. In this case, Thomas Jefferson is going to be elected, and Burr is going to become vice president. So there's Jefferson, there's Burr again. Check them out. All right, Jefferson's presidency. So Jefferson's presidency, like I said earlier, is going to be very different. The government got money through very few federal taxes. The government collected custom duties, and they could also sell federal lands, but that was really it. And the problem with that is a government without any money has a little bit of difficulty running things, obviously. And if you have very few federal taxes and all of the taxes are going towards the states, then the states technically have more power than the federal government, which isn't the way that most of our founding fathers wanted the country run. They believed that it should be the federal government and then the state governments, and that the state government should kind of just function as part of the federal government. So kind of like the idea behind in a high school, you have the overall authority, which is like the principal and the school rules and all of that, and then the idea of individual classrooms having different rules as well. So the different classrooms don't have power over the rest of the school, and they don't supersede the overall school rules, but they do have they have power to themselves, if that makes sense. Jefferson changed the government because he reduced national debt and he cut down on military expenses. Um, he wanted us to have a small national debt. He actually disagreed with the idea of the national debt. What Alexander Hamilton created was a debt plan that set up credit for the United States. It made it to where we were viewed legitimately by other countries, because if we just have an economy and we had just tried to just start up an economy at that time, nobody would have traded with us because there would have been no assurance that our economy would work. Our dollars basically had no value to other countries. It would be like if you today were to start your own country and say, hey, I'm going to create my own dollar and see how well that works. But what Alexander Hamilton did was he said, all right, well, we need to find a way to legitimize ourselves. So all of this money that we owe to Great Britain and France and so on and so forth, we're going to create a debt plan to pay it back. And we're going to create a system of credit so that as we pay back, it becomes more obvious that our economy is legitimate. And as our economy becomes more and more legitimate, the value of our dollar will increase as well. So that was pretty it's an ingenious plan. So it's this idea that we do have to have some amount of debt and we have to have some amount of credit. Hang on, guys, a little bit. But Thomas Jefferson said, let's reduce that national debt as much as humanly possible. Let's reduce our military expenses. Let's reduce how many people we are paying who are working for the government. And let's get rid of federal taxes, because he believed that the state governments should have the most power. He believed that the state governments should have precedence over everybody else. He also instituted what is called the Judiciary Act of 1801. What this did is set up what we today have as a court system. Adams used it to make hundreds of appointments during his last days in office. Think about I don't know, you guys don't follow the news. I know you guys don't. But before he leaves office, Trump has been hiring new people to put in office within the Biden-Harris administration, so that you have these people who are holdovers from the Trump administration. Obama did the same thing to Trump. He hired lots of lower level individuals who would be holdovers in Trump's administration. So there will be, it is a common thing for presidents to do to check the power of the incoming president. Jefferson did not deliver these people's commissions, so they couldn't take office. So all of these people that Adams had appointed into the courts, Jefferson said, well, I'm not going to pay them. And they said, well, you've got to pay them because we were nominated to this position. We were appointed to this position, so you have to pay us. And he said, I didn't appoint you, so I don't have to pay you. So this is going to go to the Supreme Court, and it's going to legitimize what the Supreme Court does. So Marbury is one of the appointees that Adams set up, and he asked the Supreme Court to force Jefferson to deliver his commission, so to deliver his paycheck. The court ruled that it did not have jurisdiction to do that, and that it violated the Constitution to do so. So ruling established principles of what is called judicial review, and judicial review is just going to be this idea that the Supreme Court can go through and determine whether something is constitutional or not, and what they have to do. So when Adams appointed all of these individuals, Jefferson didn't have to keep them on. And now we don't have a similar system to this. Today we have nominated officials and the cabinet members and all of that. It was set up quite a bit differently at the time. So these people that that Adams appointed, were going to be Jefferson's right-hand men. And he said, well, I didn't appoint you, so I'm not paying you. And the Supreme Court actually backed him up. The case established the power of the judicial branch to check the power of the legislative and executive branches. The Supreme Court ruled many laws unconstitutional, and has ruled that as well. As you guys work on your amendment project, you probably will see a few cases of where the Supreme Court has to go through and say, no, what you're doing is unconstitutional. And actually goes against the basic rights of American citizens. This case also strengthened the power of the Constitution in saying that no law can contradict the Constitution. So the Constitution is the main law, and if a law is created by a state or the federal government and it contradicts the Constitution, then that law is struck down, not the Constitution. It's this Constitution is the supreme law of the land. We just talked about that. The Constitution must be followed. When there's a conflict with any other law, it's the Constitution comes first, and the judicial branch can declare laws unconstitutional. They can also declare acts unconstitutional. So if president or a presidential appointee or a senator or a House member does something that is considered unconstitutional, they can be called out by the Supreme Court. Okay, this is the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the Louisiana Purchase. So this is the next big thing that Thomas Jefferson does. So number one, he legitimizes the court, the judicial branch, and and strengthens the Constitution. He also is going to buy the Louisiana Purchase. All right, so this land over here at current is what the United States would be at this time. This is the Mississippi River, and then the Spanish territory is here, some disputed territory here, and these little beautiful triangle-looking doohickeys are the Rocky Mountains. All of this right here is Louisiana Purchase. This is Louisiana territories. We're going to get into all of that in just one second, but I did want you guys to be able to see it. So, boom, Louisiana territory. Also, I colored this myself, so be impressed for a second. Yes, it looks beautiful. Oh, okay. It's really boring when you guys aren't here. All right, so problems with Spain. So pioneers are going to travel into Kentucky, Tennessee, and others are going to go to this, what is the Northwest Territory. So Kentucky and Tennessee are technically disputed points at this moment, and this Northwest Territory is also going to be a little bit disputed. Here's why. The Spanish allowed pioneers to sail on a lower part of the Mississippi River and trade in New Orleans. So as these people begin moving into this territory, they need this access to the Mississippi River, and they need access down to the Gulf because this is a prominent area of trade. As more people move into Tennessee, Kentucky, and in this Northwest Territory, they can use the Mississippi River as long as they have Spain's permission. By 1802, though, the Spanish had closed the Mississippi River and New Orleans to America due to an alliance with France. So as France began regaining Louisiana territory, Spain began rescinding agreements with the U.S., fearful that Napoleon would start taking over land in North America to expand their empire. So this is all France's territory, this is Spain's territory, and this is the U.S. Now, Spain had encroached upon all of this, but as Napoleon became more and more interested in the in North America, the Spanish began moving further and further back, and they stopped all of their agreements with the settlers who were coming into these areas. Napoleon Bonaparte, not that one. He wanted a Western empire. Napoleon is the guy from the short dude from France who had a huge ego and wanted a French empire. But then in Santo Domingo, which is the Dominican Republic, and Haiti, which are on a map, they're down here near like where Cuba is. But they had the French had settled those areas and they had set up plantations, and the enslaved Africans that they had there greatly outnumbered the French, and the enslaved Africans said, "Hey, we greatly outnumber the French," so they overthrew them and began ruling the colony for themselves, and that caused Napoleon to pull back. Other reasons as well made him realize that a Western empire wasn't something that would be in his best interest or would be something feasible that he could maintain. So Thomas Jefferson is going to send James Monroe and Robert Livingston to France to make an offer to purchase the Louisiana Territory and Florida. Jefferson's biggest concern with this deal was whether or not he had the authority to purchase such a large swath of land. He does. So he buys it and from France, and then he says, okay, well, we're going to send people out there to explore it, and that's how you get Lewis and Clark. The goals of this expedition are going to be to learn about the area's people, plants, and animals, and recommended sites for forts. They are going to be joined by Sacagawea, um, after she leaves her home with the Shoshone tribe, and she's going to be a guide for the expedition. The expedition is going to eventually reach the Pacific Ocean after traveling nearly 4,000 miles. Sacagawea was also, I don't remember, she was either pregnant at the time or she had just given birth. I can never remember. I think she was pregnant. I think she was pregnant because I remember being pregnant, and every time I asked my husband to do anything for me, he would tell me that Sacagawea wouldn't have needed him to do it because she, walked 4,000 miles across the mountains and all of that. So, yeah, you probably all wanted to know that. Anyway, so she, yeah, this is from Night at the Museum too, by the way. She became a very prominent figure because of her help on this expedition. All right, last thing we got to talk about is Alexander Hamilton and Burr's fight. These are the characters from the play Hamilton, because obviously Burr, as we saw previously, was not African American. So dramatization. Anyway, Hamilton and Burr get into a fight. They have many disagreements over the course of the founding of the country, and they decide to have a duel. And Hamilton says that he will not fire and refuses to fire on Burr. He turns his back and Burr fires, and Hamilton does not survive. So that is a big deal because Alexander Hamilton he was a founding father. He's one of the most important founding fathers simply because his idea of federalism is based in what we believe today. And also his debt plan is what created the economy that we use. Absolute genius of a guy. Maybe a little bit overhyped with the whole Hamilton thing. But if you get a chance, I would recommend watching it just because it's a good play, but also, it's pretty historically accurate. All right, so that's everything I want you guys to know for the moment. So I will stop talking. We will revisit this PowerPoint at some point. I don't really know when we'll revisit it, but we will revisit it. Why is it up there now? I should be back in school next Tuesday, so I look forward to seeing you guys. And yeah, that's all I've got for you. So y'all have a good afternoon, and make sure you're checking Schoology and GroupMe to stay up to date, because that's the only way I can communicate with you guys. All right, have a good afternoon, guys.